chair of the Australian Republic movement, and it's not often I speak in a room that's got the Queen of England and the Duke on the wall. Sorry? You got it there too, and after the revolution we'll take it down. The evolution, I should say. I am honoured to be here to speak to you today. If I'm a little bit out of sorts, it's because the first time that I spoke before such a distinguished audience in this precinct was one of the more humiliating moments of my life. I was invited to the highly prestigious opening of the Rembrandt exhibition 25 years ago. Black tie soiree. I was only invited because my sister-in-law was the curator who brought it all the way from Holland. And for attending, she'd given me strict instruction how to wear the black tie properly, how to hold the champagne glass by the stem, and we don't guzzle and throw it down. She sits and we converse and we move on. And I was desperately trying to fit in with the glitterati of the Sydney arts world. Couldn't help but notice the Executive Director General of the New South Wales Art Gallery, Edmund Capon, kept sneaking glances at me. What kind of a Neanderthal is this who has wandered into the New South Wales Art Gallery by mistake? I managed to work into the conversation. Actually, I have just finished my first book. And he immediately brightened up, congratulated me, and encouraged me to read another one. As it happens, if I have bags under my eyes, it's because I'm writing a book right now. I've only just started it. It's going to be called The Monash Masterpiece, The Battle of Le Hamel, 4th of July 1918. And a year from now, I hope that I will know everything about that battle, backwards and forwards. Right now, frankly, I don't. I have a great passion for John Monash, but it's not a passion at the moment that is backed by huge knowledge. I've come across him in various books as I've gone along, and everything I've ever read about him, I love that man. And I was thinking earlier on, what a strange circumstance it is and what an honour it is to speak on this subject and how I come to be here. It's not because I'm an historian particularly. I don't think I am a historian. I'm a historian, far more than a historian. It's not because I love war. I don't love war. I hate war. But what I love is Australian-ness. When I was studying law at Sydney University, I came across a thing from an English warlord, 1796, where he said, "I do not know how to define obscenity, but I know it when I see it." And I feel the same about Australian-ness. I don't know how to define it, but I know it when I see it. And my all-time favourite great Australian quote comes from the war after the one in which Sir John Monash made his name, in the Second World War, in the Battle of Tobruk. Chester Wilmot, the great ABC correspondent, said, "The spirit which has made Australia is the spirit which has defended Tobruk. The inspiring and binding force on Australian life isn't classicism, it's not orthodoxy, it's not nationalism. It's a very simple thing. Henry Lawson called it mateship, the spirit which makes men stick together. In Australia, mateship has allowed men to defy bushfire, famine and flood. In Tobruk, it's allowed them to defy death, hardship and destruction. This spirit of Australians is something that not even Hitler's cannons, his tanks or his dive bombers could break. And for me, the essence of what Sir John Monash was about was two things: his very Australianness, that he didn't come out of the class system. He was of the people. He treasured the lives of his men, and the fact that he totally revolutionised the way of warfare and made a mark in that Second World War. When I first came across him in any depth, oddly enough, was when I was writing a book on Ned Kelly, and you wouldn't expect the name of Sir John Monash to come up. But I came across an interview from 1929, shortly before Sir John Monash died, when he was asked, "Who is the most impressive person you've ever met?" And instead of naming princes, presidents, prime ministers, as you might expect of a man of that calibre, of a man of that width of experience, he said, "Ned Kelly." When he was 14 years old in Jerilderie, the son of a material shopkeeper, that he met Ned Kelly, he became known as the boy who talked to Ned Kelly. And the other thing that he said, the other pride of his life he talked was before they broke the Hindenburg line, when he talked about, "I couldn't convince the Council of War I called on the Western Front on the occasion I've mentioned was a ticklish business. I wasn't afraid that I couldn't convince my Australian generals that I was right, but several British generals were also present. Each one of these was a professional soldier. Each had been born into the cast iron traditions of the British Army. Each subconsciously felt some disdain for my views. I, a mere citizen soldier. Well, I had to convince these men that my plan was the best possible in the circumstances. And not only that, but send them away from that council enthusiastic about it and eager to carry it out. I did it, he concluded simply, and that, I think, really was the proudest moment of my life. So he was the son of a Jerilderie shopkeeper, come from the back of beyond, who somehow rose to be the finest general of that First World War, the most highly regarded. Montgomery of the Second World War said afterwards he was the finest general of the First War. That was his legacy, and the fact that I say that he revolutionised the whole thing. For me, to understand Monash, and again I emphasise that I don't stand before you yet as a great expert, but for me, the stunning moments with Monash came. To understand Monash, you need to understand the horrors of the Western Front to begin with, and where Gallipoli came from, where the Western Front came from, and the fact that that whole First War was the first time industrialised nations had come together. Prior, in the latter part of the 1800s, you had one industrialised nation going up against undeveloped countries, but then in that First War, you suddenly had nations that could fire bullets, 600 bullets a minute, going up against each other. The Western Front took place, and you had 5,000 men a week churning through the Western Front. So Churchill invented Gallipoli, and we all know where that ended, but that was where Monash first came to fame. And one of the lessons Monash said he learnt from Gallipoli was not to do the Churchill way of rushing in before we are ready and hardly knowing what we are going to do next. The essence of Monash's way of doing things was to value the lives of his men, to properly prepare what they were doing. He had a very informal way of going about things, dealing with his soldiers. He wrote to his wife in June of 1915 from Gallipoli, "We allow the men great freedom in dress. I started it and the others followed. You know what shorts are? They are khaki overalls, cut down so as to finish 4 inches above the knee. At the very time," and this is not to attack the Brits, Reverend, no, not to attack the Brits, but to say that while the Brits were worrying about which way to salute, John Monash was saying, dress whichever way you like, let's organise ourselves to fight. And so they did. And so when he gets to the Western Front, and this is where I'm more expert in, so Monash then takes over the 3rd Division. He did so well at Gallipoli and led his men so well and was so sparing of the lives of his men. Then he gets to the Western Front. He's had the 3rd Division, so while the 4th, the 1st, the 2nd Division are fighting in the battles, he's training up the 3rd Division. They get there, and that's when I then come across Monash again in the Battle of Fromelles and Pozieres, which is the book that I wrote a year or 2 ago. And I cannot overstate the hideousness of the carnage that Monash witnessed at that time. Fromelles, you had from the 21st of March 1918, the Germans came over the top, double the numbers of the Brits. The British forces were very brave, but they were shattered. The Australian forces came forward. They fought 12 battles in. Actually, I'm getting my battles mixed up. Fromelles, Pozieres, turn that off. I'm getting the battles mixed up. The first of all with Fromelles, what happened was 7,000 Australian soldiers were sent over in broad daylight, and in 14 hours, 5,500 of those soldiers were casualties. 1,900 men were killed. That was the hideousness of Fromelles. Men wantonly sacrificed, just as they had been in the Battle of the Neck in Gallipoli. And you then had the Battle of Pozieres, where the Australian soldiers fought very bravely, but 6,000 soldiers went down in the next 6 or 7 weeks. So that was the background where Monash suddenly arose. Well, I think it was the 30th of May, he took over the Australian Corps, and suddenly he's in command. And he then is in command of the Battle of Le Hamel. And this time, instead of doing it the way of Fromelles, which was to just send out wave after wave after wave of soldiers to be cut to pieces, he did it as an engineer. He did it as a man with 3 degrees, with a serious intellect, who studied where the weaknesses were, who instead of sending them over in broad daylight, did it in the middle of the night, in a plan that was meant to go for 90 minutes. It was so carefully calibrated it went for 93 minutes. And again, in a year's time, I will be an expert on it. At the moment, I'm not. But the essence of it was, you had this newfangled weapon called the tank, and a lot of people didn't believe in the tank. Monash believed in the tank. He had the planes coming very low, and so under the sound of the cover of the tanks, of the planes, the tanks were moved forward. He had the infantry working in tandem behind the tanks. He didn't try to take 10 miles. He wanted to take 2 or 3 miles. He did it in a fashion that totally revolutionised the whole way of warfare. And somewhere here I've got the wonderful lines of I can't find it, but it's Clemenceau, after the Battle of Le Hamel. Clemenceau comes out and he says, I want to see these men. It's one of the most inspiring words you could ever hear. So Clemenceau asked the Australian soldiers who won the Battle of Le Hamel to form up before him, and he said, tomorrow I will return to Paris. I will tell my people that I have seen the Australians. I have looked in their eyes. 3 years ago when you came to this country, we knew you would fight for the liberty of our children. We had no idea. And the wonderful thing is, as I say, that the model that Monash put forward, Sir John Monash put forward at Le Hamel, was the model that was then adopted for the rest of the war. It saved countless lives, and it's a wonderful thing that nigh on 100 years later, he should be so warmly remembered. I warmly commend those who put all this together. I hope it goes well. I wish I was more expert in it, but a year from now I'll know it backwards and forwards. Thank you for your attention.